So when we think about faculty development, we're talking about supporting and enhancing the design and development of high quality student learning experiences. So when I think about this, oh, we started 2 minutes early. I'm so sorry. No, we'll just keep going. When we think about this, this to me is where momentum really, the rubber hits the road here. When we think about the momentum approach is with our faculty in the classroom with their students. So I'm going to go ahead and just first get an idea of who's in the room here. So you should see a poll in front of you. And just let us know what your role is on campus. I'll leave it open for a minute. I'm going to be about 5 more seconds.
Denise, I've just let a cluster of folks in, so.
I'm not sure if I relaunch it, if it will reset it. So I think this probably gives us a good idea though. Thanks, Rod. So let's go ahead and looks like we have a lot of academic administrators in here, a good number of faculty advising. Great. So we want to start with, we're going to talk about faculty development at 2 different levels today. So we're going to start with a brief overview of some system level programs that my Office of Faculty Development with Jeff Galley and Peter Berryman that we've been facilitating and supporting for the past couple of years. And then we're going to hear from some campus level programs. And we've got some professionals from our teaching and learning centers here to share some of the things that they've been doing on their campuses. And what we hope is that this will give you ideas for more things that you can do moving forward to help support faculty. So let's start with some system level programs. Some of you may be familiar with the Chancellor's Learning Scholars Program. I saw several Chancellor's Learning Scholars in the list of names here today. We are now in our 3rd cohort, and we have had over 250 Chancellor's Learning Scholars so far. So these are folks who on their campus lead faculty learning communities with the purpose of facilitating sustained, meaningful conversations about teaching and learning with supportive colleagues. So these folks were trained by the professionals in the teaching and learning centers all over the system, 4 of whom are with us today to present. And so far, these FLCs have had about 2,000 participants. So 2,000 faculty members on campuses have been engaging in these faculty learning communities. The other big thing that we did just this past year over the summer and fall is our webinar series. So over these 2 semesters, we've had 18 webinars, and they have been on topics, everything from how to humanize your course, how to connect with students, hybrid teaching, inclusive classrooms. So a lot of different topic areas. And again, we had our teaching and learning center professionals facilitating almost all of those webinars. We had 38 presenters from CTLs representing 14 USG institutions, plus some folks from the USG who also presented. And we had over 900 people register for these webinars. So we were really excited about that. And most of them came to more than one webinar. And then the other thing that we want to just talk about briefly is Faculty U. So I'm going to stop sharing and let Peter Berryman, my colleague, take over here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Peter Berryman, and I was recently hired just about a month ago as Director of Faculty Development. for digital instruction here at the University System of Georgia level. Let me share my screen here. Okay, so my email address is listed there, pretty simple, peter.berryman@usg.edu. I'm here to talk to you about what is USG Faculty U. This is a faculty learning environment built in D2L's Brightspace learning management system. It will be managed by USG Office of Faculty Development. And it's a shared service that extends and supports faculty development across all institutions at the University System of Georgia. Its purpose is to build on and coordinate the efforts of all the parts and pieces of the system, bringing together the activities sponsored by USG, Office of Faculty Development, Chancellor's Learning Scholars, eCampus, Affordable Learning Georgia, and really, most importantly, the campus centers for teaching and learning. In no way is this meant to circumvent or replace the training and services that the CETLs provide at their institutions and to their faculty. It's meant to supplement and to empower and provide resources and opportunities that maybe don't exist on your campus, and also a way to bring everybody together so that rather than having conversations within your own institution, we can broaden those conversations to include all institutions. I'm going to give you a quick overview of what this product might look like. Everything is pretty much in discussion mode. Again, we only started this discussion about a month ago. Again, it's built within Desire to Learn. And so we're trying to create a portal by which we can provide access, direct and easy access to the services and products that we'd like to provide across the system. Short courses with long-term impact, special interest communities, teaching with technology resources. We're looking at ways of incorporating badging and micro-credentialing. Many times we have courses brought to us by external agencies. For instance, we have a course brought to us by Motivate Lab. Also, courses developed by other entities, such as eCampus developed the High Flex Flexible Teaching Essentials course during the COVID, during the pandemic. We're thinking about ideas of providing 10-minute coffee breaks or 10-minute courses, just short opportunities or lessons to improve instruction, as well as perhaps 90-minute workouts, other types of lessons to help you develop your teaching strategies. We hope that everything can be kind of self-contained within the platform so that it's easy for people to use and navigate and walk away with tools and knowledge that they can apply immediately. For example, here we might have a 10-minute lesson in transparency in learning and teaching. This is just a mock-up of what that instruction might look like. So that's basically where we stand with this proposal. And again, if people have developed external resources they care to share, for example, the Flexible Teaching Essentials course developed by eCampus, we also want to bring that into our platform and be able to provide and share it system-wide as well. So maybe, Denise, I don't know, that was not quite 5 minutes, I think. If anyone has a question in the chat, is there something I could respond to?
I see a question, when might this be available?
Oh, great question.
Great question.
Yeah, right. So again, we hope to have content available by August 1st. There are lots of parts and pieces to work through, such as having a single sign-on so that the users, the faculty, don't have to sign on to 2 different instances of Desire to Learn. Perhaps they can log into their institutional portals and then come straight to our portal without having to have different user IDs and credentials. So I would say August 1st is our target date. It would be wonderful if we could provide other types of products, courses, workshops and services before then as well, but there may be some technical hoops to jump through to get people into the system.
So there's a lot of questions about how to get access, when. So let me just say that we are working very closely. Peter is working really closely with our IT folks to answer a lot of questions that we don't have answers to yet. But we promise we'll let you know as soon as we know what's happening.
And definitely also at some point, we definitely want to open up conversations about what kind of content you wish to see on that platform and the best way to create that content and to be able to manage it and open up to everybody to be able to have access to.
Absolutely. So this is an overview of what the system has been doing, just a couple of the programs that we've been doing when we think about system-wide, large-scale faculty development. But now I'm super happy to turn it over first to Rod McCrae from West Georgia and Marina Smitherman at Dalton State, and they're going to talk about the Symposium model. And then after they're finished, they're going to turn it over to Laura Caruth from Georgia State and Meg Middlestat from UGA, and they're going to talk about other types of large-scale faculty development, all with the hope that you will all come away with ideas for things that you can do on your campuses moving forward. So Rod, and Marina, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. I will share my screen here in just a second. All right. So are you seeing the notes version of the PowerPoint or the main version of the PowerPoint? Or no version of the PowerPoint?
We're seeing a Zoom
Of course you are.
browser page.
All right. I've only done this a dozen times, but still, I get to show my ignorance here about this one.
There it is.
There it is. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. Thank you. Welcome to the session today. We appreciate you giving up your time. We hope the information you hear from all of us today will be useful as you're thinking about faculty development on your campuses. So Marina and I are going to focus specifically on a specific tool that we've come across that we've used across well, for West Georgia the past few years, and then Marina will talk how that's rolled out at Dalton State. And so from this, we hope that you'll have some information you might be able to apply to doing forms of faculty development and faculty change-driven initiatives on your campus. So my name's Rod. I'm the director of the Center for Teaching and Learning at West Georgia.
And I'm Marina Smitherman. I'm chair of the Department of Life Sciences and Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning Fellow at Dalton State College.
So we have a question for you to begin with, if you would. If you'll take 60 seconds and think about this question before you answer. What's your dream state for how faculty could be engaged to lead change on your campus? Take 60 seconds for that, and then we'll ask you on cue, if you wouldn't mind, sharing those via the chat window for something Marina calls the chat waterfall. About another 30 seconds.
So you might be wondering why there's this beautiful picture of a waterfall here, and we're about to figure out why with about 150 people in this room. The goal is for you to post your responses to this prompt into the chat without hitting enter. And don't worry if you do, because everyone does at some point, but type your answer to this prompt, no worries, run, into the chat, and I will go 3, 2, 1, and we'll see the chat window populate with everybody's responses, and we'll just take a look at what some of you are envisaging with this.
Oh, thanks.
So if you can type into the chat, sorry, I got muted. Don't know how that happened. And I'm going to go 3, 2, 1, hit enter, and let's see what everyone is thinking about how we can engage faculty to lead change on our campuses. Wow, that's a good one, Barbara. Yes, I love that. Faculty feel empowered and believe their efforts matter. That's a key aspect to the symposium model we're going to present today. Actually, that you've got buy-in at all levels, so that's such a great point. Robert, fully engaged would be my dream state. I think that's how we all feel at the moment. Let's see, what else do we have? These are great.
We have some if faculty had the time and space to be able to engage in these development, if they were able to do that, then they could be much more looking for new opportunities to be able to do things like, and pulling from other suggestions, being able to use data to inform what's working and not what's not working, to feel like that they are influencing the power of their learning environments. I see that someone said fully engaged would be my dream state. Absolutely. Thank you for this comment.
Sorry, Rod.
No,
I really like Bruno Hicks put intentionality. I think that's another key aspect of what we're going to talk about today. It's a highly intentional way of engaging all stakeholders in change. And the time, Catherine, yeah, the time to do it. Isn't that a precious resource these days? Wow, these are great. This is a really exciting future we've envisaged for our campuses right now.
So keep those in mind as we go through and launch into talking about the Symposium model. Marina's going to sort of give you an outline of how that works, and then we'll give you some examples, and we'll also share with you a very basic handout that just has some logistics and some basics about how you can perhaps apply this model to your own setting for change on campus. Marina, can you see the slide?
I can't see the next slide, actually. Can you go to the next? I still see the waterfall.
Okay, you've got the main one up is the thumbs up logo, I think. Denise, is that correct? Do I have the introduction to Symposium model slide up?
Oh, we're seeing the waterfalls still.
Don't go chasing waterfalls, folks, because apparently I'm on the wrong slide. See what I did there? You're welcome. Has that changed it now? I think it's because I'm on the chat. Let's break out of chat for a second. That's super weird.
Oh, yeah. Yay. All right, okay. We're good. So in thinking about Symposium, it's probably easiest with what it is, it's probably easiest to think a little bit about what it isn't first. Because when we hear the word Symposium, we really imagine a couple of days like you've had, right? 2 or 3 days filled with talks on different aspects of work that you're interested in. And so this is sort of almost the exact opposite of that. And so this model, if you plan it right, is much more focused on getting all stakeholders engaged in discussions on data, having opportunities to think differently about a big change or an issue or something that collectively needs solving. And I had an interesting discussion in a book group this last week where a faculty member was like, well, all change comes from the administration. And I was like, gosh, does it? Actually, I feel like faculty have a good opportunity to lead. So there's always been this question of, is it top down or is it bottom up? And so the nice thing about the Symposium model is that it's very much a meet in the middle approach to change on any college campus. And it has its roots in Japanese business culture. And actually, University of Georgia has been holding these annually for decades. And there's not a lot published on it, actually. Rod and myself and a couple of other colleagues presented on this at AACNU in 2020. And Libby Morris wrote an article about its impact in 2008, but otherwise this hasn't been well written on, but I think that anyone that's been involved in the ones that we've had can say this is a hugely impactful tool that's been really, really fun. So essentially the elements are quite easy to plan, almost worryingly easy if you're used to organizing faculty development. Because essentially what you do is consider all of the stakeholders that have an interest in achieving the particular change that you're interested in. And that group can be absolutely just faculty, but it can be much more diverse than that when you're thinking about change. And then you prepare them. There's an argument about which comes first, but then you prepare them, that group, to do the work. So you might find peer-reviewed journal articles, you might find books, give them the opportunity to do some research ahead of time about that particular issue. And so one of the examples we're going to do today is about high impact practices, so AAC&U's high impact practices. And this is a good example in this case of like, well, how are we going to implement high impact practices on our campus? So then you bring people into usually a 1.5 to 2 day symposium, and you give them a problem to solve. And the nice thing about the problem is it starts very aspirational, right? For example, what's your dream state for how high impact practices would be implemented on our campus? Right? What does that look like if we achieve beyond our wildest dreams? What does that look like on our campus? Right? And so people break into small working groups. You might have a small group working on undergraduate research, first year experience, and so on and so forth, working on that piece of the prompt. And then, and usually you have some kind of motivational speaker first to kind of kick things off, get people excited and engaged. Then you ask, okay, well, if we're going to achieve that, what are the challenges? What are the key challenges or obstacles to us achieving this work on our campus? People go away, do some more thinking, and come back. And this is the key thing. The last step is a working group puts together a set of recommendations that will then go to your higher ups. So for this to be successful, and I think to Barbara's point, faculty feel engaged and that their work is recognized and matters, it requires buy-in from upper administration, because if this working group comes up with a set of recommendations, there's a reasonable expectation following this model that those are going to be acted upon.
Your pause, Marina, tells me that it's my turn, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to get my screen back to talking. Apologies. Apparently,
I
whenever I open the chat window.
So I went under.
So I've just shared with you in the chat window, which I think then limits how I use the moving through the slides, because I'm doing from the same computer. But I've shared a shared Google Doc, which should have universal access. And so that document has some basics about how you might look at just thinking about and planning for a faculty symposium, a staff symposium. At West Georgia, we've done a few different types, and so I'll explain that and give you some background to those. But so this is just an overview document that you can use, and I want to invite you to reach out to Marina or to me if you have any questions about how that might work. We've been involved in these in different ways, and so would be keen to see how we've seen good results with these, especially as ways for lots of different forms of experience, expertise, knowledge, representations of groups come together and coalesce to form ideas that wouldn't have happened if it weren't for the way that this venue was established. So I am clicking through the next page, and can I get a thumbs up that we see examples of faculty symposia? Okay, good. Thank you. So this is just, I have here some examples from the University of West Georgia. And so our first one we ran was in 2016, in the summer of 2016. And I want to emphasize the summerness of things in just a second. It began when our provost at the time, Dr. Michael Crafton, was interested in trying to get faculty input on how we might go about becoming a LEAP campus, a Liberal Education America's Promise campus. And so the provost is an English professor by trade, or he calls himself humbly just an English teacher. But part of it was making sure that we're getting, as a humanities person, getting lots of input from lots of people. And then from that, coming out with specific steps that we can take together as a campus. So we began at that in the summer of 2016, after what was the founding director of the Center for Teaching and Learning, Dr. Cher Hendricks. She was familiar with the symposium process and went to the provost and said, well, let's try it this way. And provost was like, well, are you sure? There's not a lot written about it. And she said, look, it works at UGA. It's got a long background in a lot of different ways. Let's give it a go. So he called forth with a team of people came together, and we had roughly, it was probably about 50 folks, 2 days over the summer. And we met on an instructional satellite campus in Newnan, Georgia. And so these folks came under their own time. There was no stipend to come. There was no promise of, launching up the ranks. There was no promise of extra time. What they knew is they were giving an opportunity to be able to do something on campus and to be a functional part of that. And that promise, that invitation, was so well received that we were generally surprised and genuinely surprised by the fact that people showed up in their summertime and gave of their time. Of course, we fed them. And I was sort of a helper at that point of just trying to help this thing come together. And so we created 4 groups around how we might roll out LEAP on campus. And those 4 groups are actually built around LEAP-aligned high impact practices, which, as you see there on the screen, we did in more detail in 2018. So this is what the agenda looked like for that summer 2016 Academic Affairs Faculty Symposium on LEAP. And so if you have the other document, I'm sorry, looking at that document over on this screen, which is why I'm not staring out the window or watching people play out in the sunshine. This document is encompassing some of the broad strokes that Google Doc I shared with you before. So what I have for you here is kind of a version of how that might look if you were to do something on your campus. This was a 2-day event. And we ran it and we didn't put them up anywhere. That was just we had a shuttle bus running from our Carrollton campus to the Newnan campus. Some folks drove, other folks carpooled when that was a thing that we could actually do. And so what we ask is some questions, and those questions, those guiding questions, are sort of deceptively and deliciously simple. Deceptively simple because they're open, they can be open enough to be able to invite a lot of sort of very free range thinking, but they get more specific as they go through, and they eventually funnel to the ideas that became recommendations and then on into action steps according to the administration and how they want to roll out the plan. So we started with that big possibilities of the dream state. It was just that first session, 45 minutes. Here's how it looks. Here's how it's going to work. Big ideas. Before this going into the session, we'd already had a talk from Lee Neffelkamp, who has passed, but at the time was the AAC&U Senior Fellow. Fascinating speaker, and I think that's a key part of this too. If you can bring in people who are really interesting speakers, and so she talked with us about LEAP. And before that, all of the people who were invited to come received some basic LEAP documents that you can find on the AAC&U website. But it talks about the LEAP challenge and how to work through real world problems in higher education. There's a lot to that. But we shared some basic documents so that everybody was coming to this venue with a shared set of understanding, with similar readings, and could therefore, the big ideas that we talked about in that first breakout session allowed us to be able to sort of talk around those 4 groups that had specific topics. One was capstones, another one was first year experiences, and those sorts of topics. So those people in those groups of about 8 to 10 sort of just talked about the big strokes and what would that dream state look like. And that dream state question is really important. And that's the one we threw at you at the beginning of our portion of the session. So we really want you to be sort of come at this like, if there were no limitations, if we had everything in the world that we needed, what would it look like? And then you work from there and sort of begin to reshape it, considering whatever limitations might be at play. And so as we move through this, and I'm just checking my time here real quick. Okay. And so as we move through this, we went then to the next session after lunch was to talk about what could we do to be able to make that possible, what challenges and barriers were at stake, and then people went away. And then the next day they came back, and very many of them had come back with drafts of ideas and worked on ideas in their own time in the evening because they were so energized by the discussions they'd had that day. So that when they came back to day 2, pause dramatically, that day 2 had us doing 2 more sessions where we prepared those group recommendations. Apologies for missing the capital G on group. And then we also had presentations of the recommendations to the provost, and then the provost and Lee Neville Camp responded. So that sounds like a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of talking, and essentially it's sort of 6 hours per 2 days. And I want to show you a photo of the group who are doing this. Is roughly 40, about 40 of the 50 people. This is not the beginning of the first morning. This is at the end of the second afternoon. Do you see all the teeth? Right? That's a lot of smiling going on. People were really genuinely excited about what was going to happen next because they felt like they were part of a change process that wasn't being put on top of them, or that they were having to do all the heavy lifting and trying to do less, do more with less. No, hang on. Yeah, just checking, make sure I had that the right way around. And so these folks were, this is the, again, end of day 2, and folks are smiling. We did it again in 2018 on the Provost Symposium of High Impact Practices. Again, this photo is from the end of day 2, all the teeth, right? Like, so much smiling, people are energized, they came away from this thing. There wasn't like some hilarious somebody taking a photo. It really was a genuine, like, this is good work. We are part of something that's making a huge change. So that's part of the overall, so some of the broad strokes of logistics. And if you have further questions about that, please let us know. But it does really make sure, as Marina had said earlier on, making sure that folks have the information they need to be able to come to that group together, and then doing the work together, and then making sure that whoever makes the decision, in this case, it was the provost, that person's involved and being heard and hearing as well, so that we know that that person's taking away the best of the recommendations that come out, so something actually happens.
So I'm going to provide a couple of examples of symposia, one symposium that we've run on campus at Dalton State, and another one that we have planned here that's hopefully coming up soon, as soon as we can gather in a room anyway. So we had a couple of faculty at Dalton State who had expressed an interest in environmental education. And they had posed the question to me, what would it look like if we had a center for environmental education in our area that focused on international conservation? And this was really as a result of some work we were doing in terms of research on our campus, but also some work that the local K-12 schools had been doing on conservation of monarch butterfly species. And this was the first time that we really brought those groups together. So this is sort of an example of, whilst this works really, really well with faculty, it doesn't just have to be limited to faculty if you've got diverse stakeholders. In addressing the question, what would it look like if we had, we were a center for environmental education? You want to consider K-12 teachers, as well as our faculty, administrators from the school systems, both the campus as well. And we have also included the local Chamber of Commerce and local industry sponsors as well. And what we did was bring in for our motivational we actually expanded the motivational speaker from just a one session first thing in the morning to a half day. And we brought some scientists. We found some money to bring some scientists from Mexico to talk about what they were doing in terms of action on deforestation in Mexico, to think a little bit about what the impact was on the monarch butterfly population, and then some experts in the field. And it's hard to describe the energy in the room, but we have a room on campus that seats probably 120 people, and it was jam-packed with people of from all walks of life. And so that was a really nice way to kick off that work. And so we had that half day, we had a break and a dinner where we started to work on our aspirations, right? What was our dream state for this center to take effect? And then spent the following day working on recommendations. And this is a unique example in the sense that now actually the school system is taking the lead on this project with our collaboration, which has been just a really wonderful experience. When you think about what it takes to have sustained organizational change, you want to capitalize on enthusiasm and engagement and passion. You want to have shared leadership and empower people to act. And so this for us was a way to really kick off this work that we've been trying to get going for a couple of years. The other thing that we're going to use this model for, and this was actually planned for fall 2020, and we all know how that went, right, was actually we put in a grant in the School of Arts and Sciences at Dalton State. We put in a grant to run a series of symposia over 5 years towards inclusive excellence. And we have some work to do on removing barriers to achievement for our student population. We're a minority serving institution. And so asking the question, what is our dream state for an inclusive excellence education on our campuses is kind of a huge task. And so that's still a work in progress. The hope is that we'll be doing that in the fall of 2022, and we just received 2021. I'm sorry, and we just received a grant to fund this work. So we're really very much looking forward to that. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I feel like that was a quick overview if people have interest in how this is all going to work.
We did get a question in the chat window from Dr. Stacey Boyd asking about if we've had any experience of doing these in a virtual environment. And so I'm just going to say what I just ended up writing. But that is to say that I haven't facilitated or taken part of any faculty symposia virtually, but I imagine if I had to sort of think of it first gloss interpretation, we'd probably have more breakout sessions, but with smaller people, and they would be shorter because that Zoom burnout is a thing. And so I think to be able to make sure that those discussions are generative, I would say they're probably going to be more intense and shorter, but then broken off across a larger range of time so people have a chance to go away and come back and be able to mediate their experience with having a camera in their face. There are probably other ways we can think of this too, so I'll give that some more thought, Dr. Boyd. So we have a quick question here as our time comes to a close. And one of the hardest parts that we've got that we have to sort of launch you off was, okay, what am I going to do this topic around? So we want to sort of give you a chance here and using the chat window again, taking, let's say we're at time. So again, another sort of 60, 90 seconds to think of this question here. What topics for your particular campus could serve as the focus of a symposium? And then I've got some sub questions here about how you might go about thinking that. So 60, 90 seconds to sort of think that through, jot some ideas down, put them in the chat window. And then when we say 3, 2, 1, share those out, if you will. I'll start my little timer. Okay. About another 45 seconds. We want to make sure we do not encroach on the next time slot for the excellent Laura Carruth and Meg Middlestat. All right, so if you'll go ahead and share your responses there, and we'll take a minute if anybody feels brave enough to unmute their microphone and share their idea, that would be great. Otherwise, we can summarize them for you, but it's always excellent to hear from people who are thinking about this themselves. So as you're thinking about unmuting, I'm gonna have to say one thing that makes my heart glad is I'm seeing the word inclusivity all through the waterfall here. That's so awesome. Again, I'll tell you how awesome it is from my perspective, and I see some of my colleagues here nodding furiously as well. I think this is a really, this model, this design could make a lot of change or help the rolling out of how inclusivity could work, at diversity, equity, inclusivity, even social justice works in relation to teaching and learning.
Yeah, I totally agree, Rod. I'm looking at that and I feel like maybe a group of us, I'd be happy to coordinate a group of people interested in Symposia, in inclusive excellence. I think that we're still working on what that's going to look like, but we certainly have enough work to do. And HIPS too, Judy, I see that. I think HIPS is just a great example of how to engage everyone in HIPS, again, not rather than being top down. I think that's wonderful. I think Rod and I can both speak to that.
This was just a very short introduction to the Symposium model. And so there's a lot more that could be said. And we've run sort of 3-hour-and-a-half-day workshops on this with our colleagues before. So you got like the boiled down version. So excuse the intensity, but we do want to make sure our colleagues have time as well. You got our email addresses there. So if you have any questions or ideas or want feedback or whatever else, please reach out. We'll be glad to help. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Rod and Marina. I have participated in the Symposium at UGA once, and it really was transformative. I mean, it was empowering and just a really great experience. So I hope you all will get in touch with Marina and Rod, because they don't have much going on, and I know they're looking for something else to do. Okay, so now I'm so happy to turn it over to Laura Carruth at Georgia State and Meg Middlestat at UGA to talk about other types of large-scale faculty development.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I am going to share my screen, and then Meg and I will begin. Hopefully you can now see this PowerPoint. And all right, I'm getting some thumbs up. Excellent. So I'm Laura Carruth. I'm the director of the Georgia State Center for Excellence in Teaching, Learning, and Online Education, and I'm an associate professor in the Neuroscience Institute.
And I'm Meg Middlestat. Good afternoon. I'm the director of the UGA Center for Teaching and Learning.
We're happy to be with you today to talk to you about faculty development in general. Plus, I'm going to give an example, sort of a case study of a faculty development opportunity that we experienced at Georgia State that was a development program that happened as a result of COVID. It started in a panic and it resulted in some very positive faculty development opportunities. And to get you started, this example from Georgia State is a Mastering Online Teaching course. So, or we call MOT. And this is a 4-week synchronous course that is comprised by mostly asynchronous training and weekly modules that is supplemented by real-time webinars. And for this course, it is designed to help faculty be ready to teach online. This doesn't mean that if you go through this 4-week course, you are going to be a premier online instructor, but it gives you a really strong foundation in being able to develop and teach an online course, or to teach a hybrid course and use the LMS in a much more engaging way. And prior to 2020, this course served at the most 25 faculty per semester who opted in. They were just interested in teaching online. And it was a very small course with lots of high touch practices, and faculty got a lot of input on the development of their online materials. And then in March 2020, everybody knows what happened. As we all switched to teaching remotely, we really needed to think at Georgia State about how we were going to help faculty be able to teach online or teach in a hybrid manner. And this wasn't just a response to finishing the spring semester. This was a response to thinking about how do we think about online education for the summer and going into fall 2020, because we needed to make sure that we served our students the best we could. And we needed to take, so at Georgia State at that time, we did not have a lot of courses that were online. And we needed to make sure that we were going to be doing the best for all of our students. And we had a massive scale up. We ran the MOT course from April through December. In fact, we're still running it now. And we basically had over a 100-fold increase in the number of participants in that time. We went from about 25 a semester to almost 2,700 faculty. And they had the option of earning a badge. And the badge just means you did every element within this, and you went through this checklist. And 1,200 earned a badge, and some of them are actually still going back and completing this and earning the badge now. But this was a massive scale up. And we did this, it started out of needing to help our faculty be prepared to reduce stress and to help them feel like they were more in charge. Faculty were not mandated to do this. They could opt in. They were strongly encouraged by their department chairs, their deans, and the provost, but nobody was required to complete this scale up or to participate in this course. And we also ran at the same time versions for graduate teaching assistants, because we also needed to prepare GTAs to support their instructors in a new teaching modality. A lot of them knew what to do in a face-to-face course, but engaging with students online was very different. So we also ran over 600 GTAs through the course, with less than half of those earning the MOT badge. And currently we're doing a MOT 2.0, which is, now that you've had this month-long course, we're offering smaller modules for faculty who've gone through that, who can actually engage in the material more. And our first one just launched at the beginning of February, and it's called Design for All. And this is helping faculty really grasp the understanding of accessibility and universal design for learning, and making sure they understand what their learners are experiencing in an online course. But if you think about this, going from 2,700 faculty, from 2,500, with just my center teaching this, it would feel like a MOOC. This would feel like a very large enrollment online course. And how could we ensure that faculty got the feedback that they needed? Because that's not what we wanted. We didn't want people to go through this and at the end, not even be sure if what they developed was appropriate. So we needed to scale it up, but scale it up as a way of also sharing the resources on campus with faculty who are engaged online instructors. So how we scaled is we did have seat low course instructors. So we ran the course. So these would be people on the pedagogy team, people who are learning technologists, and some instructional designers. But however, we recruited faculty facilitators. Depending on the size of the MOT, we recruited 5 to 16 a month. And they acted as teaching assistants, and they made this large course feel smaller, and they shared their expertise. So in the chat, there were great comments. I know Judy said one about faculty sharing their expertise. Somebody made a comment about cooperative sharing and cooperation, and that's what this was all about. These faculty facilitators came in with experience in teaching online, and we recruited them from across the university. So perimeter campus all the way through people in business school. They had online teaching experience and perhaps had gone through a previous MOT that we offered. And they helped reduce the stress that faculty felt by going through and saying, this is what I've experienced. This is a good way to model this. And they shared their expertise, and they did it in a way that helped in a way that really built community within the small sections within MOT. So they provided feedback and advice, and they also reviewed the online building sections for each faculty member. And if they had thoroughly completed a building section, then they were able to earn the badge. So most people built quite a bit of their course, but they might not have completed it during the entire 4 weeks. We did offer stipends to the faculty facilitators. And we did this through CARES Act funding, but a lot of them came back even after it was over and said, hey, I'll keep helping, because I think that they found it as rewarding as the people who were the faculty serving as students in this course. So this happened because we scaled up using the greatest resource we have at GSU, which are our instructors. So it was only scalable at the level to provide this more detailed and supportive environment because of these great facilitators we have. The other thing that we wanted to do is we either reached out to people and invited them, or chairs nominated people and say, hey, so-and-so is going to be a great faculty facilitator. So one of the great things about this is it also let me connect with people on campus I may not have worked with as well. And it opened up our center in pulling in new faculty to share their expertise. Because if anything we know, and as I'm doing now, we like to talk, faculty like to talk. And they shared, and that was one of the greatest things about this course. Also, the GTAs, we recruited experienced graduate students who had online experience, and departmental graduate coordinators to facilitate the GTA course. And I think one of the greatest things about that is it really helped the graduate students have a better connection with some of their graduate facilitators. So these could either be faculty who were overseeing a graduate pedagogy course in a department, or who just are involved with pedagogy training. And so this is an example of a scalable faculty development opportunity that I know not everybody could be at an institution where you can scale from 25 people up to 2,000. Hopefully you'll never need to do this, and we'll never need to do it again. But it highlights what we're talking about here is using faculty as a resource. And with that, we'll transition to the next slide, which is about faculty.
Great. So as Laura just mentioned, that was a really nice deep dive into a robust example of scalable faculty development experience. So we're going to go through sort of a more shallow dive into examples that underscore some of the features that we've discussed, as well as some additional features. But before I dig into this slide, I first want to mention that when you're designing scalable faculty development programming for your campus, it's really important that you take a step back and determine not only what is there an appetite for on your campus in terms of the resources and topics that folks are interested in engaging with, but also thinking about the administrative strengths present on your campus and the folks who have real energy to bring to bear to serve as organizers to get things going, because that's really where you're going to find some great traction. So as we're talking about these next few micro examples, if you hear something in there that makes you think, oh yeah, we have something like that as a resource on our campus too, you might be tapping into something that could be a scalable resource, we think. So in terms of using faculty as a resource, you could use faculty in a number of ways. One example is as capitalizing on the faculty champions model. At UGA, we do this by capitalizing on the fantastic strengths of our lecturer population. At UGA, we have folks that engage in faculty development programming through our center and emerge with such sort of excitement and strength and political capital in their local departments that they're able to promote greater culture change within their units around a practice that they may have engaged in a significant faculty development experience through our center. So for example, we have a summer course redesign series where folks that emerge from that summer course redesign series oftentimes go back to their departments and really catalyze some greater culture change around that pedagogy that was explored in the Course Design Institute. You've heard a little bit already about faculty learning communities this afternoon. At UGA, we use faculty learning communities as one of our major scalable opportunities. The way that we use faculty learning communities at UGA is that we have faculty provide the FLC topics and the leadership within the FLC. So it's really expanding the capacity of our Center for Teaching. In addition to our Chancellor's Learning Scholar groups, we also have 10 or more FLCs per year. We've had as many as 16 or 18 in 1 year, each with at least 10 faculty participating. So if you do the math real quick in your head, that's a pretty great scaling opportunity with one CTL point person, just a 10% of their effort, providing the administrative oversight, doing the marketing and recruitment of FLC participants on behalf of the ideas for those FLCs. We provide a little bit of training for the FLC facilitators at the outset of the year and a small budget for each FLC. It's ranged from $200 up to $750 per FLC per year. And they get to decide how to use those funds. Faculty mentors, you heard an example from Laura just a moment ago. We do something like this at UGA that's become really popular recently called our teaching triads, which is a peer review of teaching program that's formative for both the observer and the observee, I think in a similar manner to what Laura described when she said folks wanted to come back and continue to serve as facilitators in their course because they found it to be so generative for their own professional development as well. In our teaching triads, 3 faculty connect to arrange peer review of one another's classes, and they meet after each observation to chat. And that activity promotes critical reflection and interdisciplinary engagement that's really valuable to folks in kind of forming roots at the institution in ways that pay off for faculty retention as well. The groups of 3 faculty are critical because that engages forward momentum even when one person in the 3 has to take a step back because of life or work getting a little bit more busy. So our groups of 3 really ensure that usually there's 2 folks that are really jiving and moving forward in their practices. Resource sharing we found to be an excellent opportunity to capitalize on throughout the pandemic. USG, the faculty development group, did this by pulling resources from the individual USG institutions to host in a central repository on the USG website. Many of these are under Creative Commons licenses. And there are resources like this that exist at other institutions. Louisiana State University had a really popular Creative Commons licensed resource that I think, Laura, you all used at your institution. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so the last 2 here are departmental liaisons. That can look a number of different ways depending on how you'd like to use them on your campus, but identifying a point person within various units on campus to serve as the connection point between your center and the individual department. So a hub and spoke type model where that person that's the liaison becomes a real go-to resource for the others in the department. And finally, faculty book and journal clubs. I think both GSU and UGA have done book clubs on bandwidth recovery recently. I know West Georgia has as well. We've had recent book clubs on Radical Hope by Kevin Gannon, a real sort of invigorating, exciting opportunity to talk about the spark of teaching and trying to tap into that real excitement that folks feel for teaching at a time when teaching can be pretty draining. So that's been really great.
And I'd like to add one last bit on resource sharing. We have seen a lot of good grassroots work at this at Georgia State where departments have developed resources that they then build into a non-course section in the LMS. So we call our LMS iCollege. So they'll build an iCollege site. They'll invite all the instructors from a department, and then they just use that to share resources. And so that's just another great way where faculty can find, they don't have to recreate the wheel, and they can go into this and find something that might fit with what their teaching needs are. So faculty are such a great resource. And what we want to do, if you can't incentivize with funds, which we know that can become a challenge, is find ways to incentivize with recognition. So awards, shout outs, or highlights. We did highlight all of the faculty who served as facilitators. The provost also sent them all thank yous for serving as facilitators. So they were recognized at a university level for doing what they were doing. And I also think within centers and what we can do for our colleagues is nominate our good instructors. Nominate people for any kind of departmental college level award or university level award, and then also have these become the state awards through the USG. So I think recognition is something that is a great way to let faculty know that we value the contributions that they're doing. And it also lets their colleagues recognize the strengths that that their fellow faculty members are bringing to teaching at the university.
We've also shared non-monetary support at UGA in addition to monetary support.
Sorry.
That's okay.
It's going insane.
Here we go. So one of the examples of what we do to provide non-monetary support is that we provide priority access to other desirable resources. For example, faculty who complete certain training programs have priority access to our learning glass studio or access to media production support, folks who can help them create resources.
A single man. Yes.
You might also consider providing faculty early access to classroom assignments in desirable spaces on campus as one other example. And then tech tool user groups is a great idea. You know, there's a little bit of money behind it if you don't already have some technology to share, or you can have folks collaborate on using their professional development funds that they might have awarded to collaborate and buy a technology resource that they'll share. A few years ago, we had a big meeting around large class instruction. And so we had a faculty learning community on teaching in large classes. We purchased a few of those Catchbox throwable microphones. It was just a couple $100 investment, and the interested faculty who were engaged in that group shared the checkout and use of those Catchbox microphones in their amphitheater classrooms. They even used them outside, some of them, and provided some feedback and video of them using it so that we could share what that resource was on campus.
And the other thing we can do is help faculty know that their input matters and help them become agents of change at your universities. So this happens through faculty learning communities. Our learning communities at Georgia State submit a report at the end of the year and talk about things that they would like to see happen. They're also invited to participate on advisory boards, and on development committees. They become a voice of change on curriculum committees and departments. And so what we want to do is recognize that teaching matters, and then have these instructors share this information with each other through any kind of program at the university. So with the advisory boards, we now have a new online teaching advisory board that's part of CETLO at Georgia State. And so faculty were invited to participate on this. And in it, we want it to not feel like it's just a committee that you're now serving on and it's extra service, but that what they're providing actually is going to help create and make plans that we can adopt in the future. And I think that that's part of what they want to see as well, that their input and experience in teaching is valued.
Absolutely. I would say, as you've heard, that's a real value that we share too. And one of the ways that we've been able to connect some of these structures that we've talked about so far is that when we have a faculty learning community that produces a resource that's highly valuable and folks really like, the CTL tries to promote that resource in ways that others might use it. So for one example, one of our faculty learning communities created a resource that we call SALT. I'll drop a link to it in the chat. Some of you who've been at the USG Teaching and Learning Conference the last time it was held in person might have seen this tool. But this is a tool related to the proliferation of active learning techniques in classes across campus. And UGA's next QEP is going to be on active learning. So we were able to seed some recognition and leadership for the folks who participated in that particular faculty learning community in our QEP implementation and selection committee, so that they could really drive that initiative on our campus beyond their participation in that FLC and beyond the creation of this standalone resource. And then finally, I think one interesting way that a lot of the CTL directors across the USG have really, I think, shared a value for scaling faculty development is around supporting SOTL research projects. A lot of us who have promoted SOTL projects on our campuses have helped other faculty with their research design, help providing feedback on draft proposals, or helping folks apply for grants or travel supplements to attend conferences to present their findings. At our CTL at UGA, we've had real success with creating an umbrella IRB and helping folks fall into that umbrella IRB. That works really well for us because we have a human subjects office that is really supportive and responsive on our campus. So it was a relatively easy growth area for us. So our CTL holds this umbrella IRB related to the link between active learning and students' academic success, and then individual studies that are proposed by faculty can be added to the IRB more quickly than securing an independent IRB approval. And there are far fewer administrative hoops for the individual faculty member to jump through. And so it's been a real great opportunity. I think right now we have about 12 to 15 active SOTL projects from faculty outside of our center under this umbrella IRB just this semester in the midst of a pandemic. So it's a real great opportunity that I'd encourage you to pursue if you think that's something that you might have a value for on your campus as well. So I'd like for us to wrap up today by reflecting on what you can do on your campuses. And there's a bit.ly link here on this slide that will open a Padlet, which for those of you who are unfamiliar with Padlet, the link will open a web page that has 3 questions listed at the top of the web page. Under each question is a plus sign. And when you click on that plus sign, a text box will open where you can type or insert links or whatever you would like to represent your thoughts on that subject. As ideas are added, the text boxes will appear within the column they were added to, and the plus sign migrates down the page. So you'll have to chase the plus sign a little bit, probably like Marina's chat box waterfall a little bit here, depending on how quickly you all add your ideas. And I believe we have time for a brief breakout session for folks. Is that right, Denise?
Meg, do you want to put the Padlet link in the chat, and then I can stop sharing? So do you want to share the Padlet screen since you're logged in for that, and I'll stop sharing now. Does that sound good?
Yeah. It looks like Denise beat me to it.
So. Oh, thank you, Denise, for doing that. So I'll stop sharing so that we can have the Padlet launch.
So this is what you'll see when you go to the Padlet. It's it looks like a graffitied wall, and then you will add your graffiti, and you can see that folks are adding their feedback as we speak. So you can go to it from your own computers. And I'll let Denise talk about the breakout groups. And when we come back from the breakout groups, I'll wrap us up by sharing some of the common threads that I see proliferating through the Padlet.
Great. And so we're going to send you off to breakout rooms for 13 minutes. Go ahead and, as they said, make sure you open the Padlet ahead of time. Because I think the chat goes away once you get there. And you may just have 1 or 2 people who are your recorders. I've made the rooms about 8 or 9 people, just in case you lose some folks. So we're gonna send you off, and then you'll come back in about 13 minutes and we'll talk about what we see. All right, looks like everyone is back. Meg, did you want to do a little look at our Padlet and see what folks have said?
Absolutely, probably not surprisingly, because we didn't talk about it much before the break. Most folks really talked about the costs, the sort of challenges and costs affiliated with scaling faculty development. And I think they're worth highlighting here because there was so much consensus. Initiative fatigue is one that came up in many groups, a bit meta, I think, because some folks were talking about initiatives on their campuses that they are pushing and that many folks are pushing, and it's just initiative after initiative. It's really hard to keep up that enthusiasm when it's initiative after initiative. Lack of time, especially now during the pandemic where everything takes so much longer, and the folks that, like Colin mentioned in our group a second ago in our breakout group, the folks who give and give and give are tapped and tapped and tapped until they're exhausted. And so trying to find ways to draw out the folks who aren't necessarily your core enthusiastic folks after something like this pandemic has shifted, and we're back to a little bit more of regular operations is going to be important. And lack of time, I think, too, is really important to focus on. So thinking about highlighting topics that folks feel like they want to think about in their spare time anyway. I know Georgia Tech does a good job of this as well, sort of hallway conversations with faculty to identify what folks are thinking about, the kinds of things that are worrying them or keeping them up at night, planning events around those topics so that folks feel like, oh, great, this is that thing I've been worrying about in my spare time. I don't even know where to begin. And here's this event where we're talking about this idea at our institution, is really an invigorating opportunity for folks to want to engage in. We've had a couple of examples of institutions, practices, and I especially appreciate a couple of comments where folks have included links to programs. So if you're thinking, gosh, I do a program that's sort of like what they talked about, or I do a program that's nothing like what they talked about and is completely unique, it would be fantastic if you could insert a URL that explains that programming so that folks could see some of the basic bones of what you're talking about and maybe follow up with the folks in charge if they have questions. So if you have a moment before you go, that would be wonderful.
And someone put in the chat, can you suggest grants to apply for funding? I think what you want to do is look at both, when you're looking at extramural funds, you can look at funds from one of the big governmental agencies, Department of Education, if you're in STEM, National Science Foundation. But there are also lots of really interesting foundation grants that you can look at. The Delphi Award is great if you're doing any kind of faculty development related to part-time instructors or adjunct instructors. They've got funding. The Knight Foundation and the Templeton Foundation also support faculty development as it relates to student programming. And so those are some places to get started. And we also saw that if you're thinking of larger scale kind of programming, what Marina and others have applied for with the Howard Hughes, so HHMI grants are other opportunities. And helping faculty get these awards is also one way to have recognition. I know at least at Georgia State, if we bring in money, money talks, and that it leads to support and recognition. So that always helps.
And I would say too, if you're looking at looking for smaller dollar amount infusions of money, we've had some great success with going to our local businesses to get them to sponsor coffee hours or a refreshment bar at an event. So if you have folks on your campus who are tapped into local commerce organizations, then that's a great place to go to ask folks if they would like some advertising via a coffee event, if they'd like to sponsor it.
Well, we have about 4 minutes left. Are there any, or what questions do you all have for our panelists or for our office to help you all move forward? You should be able to unmute your microphones, or you can put them in the chat.
I like the symposium models that were introduced at the beginning of the session. And if we wanted to find out more about those approaches, where can we go?
Well, Marina is gone. Oh, but Rod's still here. I know there's very little written about them. So I would say Rod, Marina, or even Meg, who has done a lot with that at UGA. Do you all know of any written resources?
I am looking at this moment for Libby Morris's article. It's just a 3-pager, but it's I think it's a PDF available, which it's called Faculty Engagement in the Academy, and it talks about it was an earlier on exploration of what they were doing at UGA. Meg, do you have that available? Do you know where I could find it?
I do. The citation is at the end of your Google document that you shared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was hoping that I could maybe find a hot link to it. I don't see one readily available. Perhaps through your libraries. And then there are a few other articles we've found that kind of correlate. But yes, the problem with the faculty symposium model is that when we were doing them, we didn't realize, to be honest, we didn't realize how successful they were going to be. So we didn't really follow our own best practice. Say we should do, before and after study and see what people, how their, their opinions or sense of efficacy or involvement in or engagement into a particular aspect of the topic has changed. And so we regret that now, because those would have been excellent publishing opportunities. But so you kind of have to take it from us that our anecdata is a good representation of some of the success you might be able to gain.
I do have a question. I do have a question. I noted that when some of the links that you provided, that for Georgia Tech, they allowed faculty outside of their college to university to access some of their faculty development. What about some of the other colleges and universities? Do you allow any faculty outside of your university or college to access any of your development?
We do at Georgia State. So any of our webinars you can participate in if you have a GSU or a USG affiliated university email address. We weren't able to for our MOT course because it was built within our LMS, but when people contacted us about it, we also referred them to the wonderful course that was designed and provided by Amy Austin within the eCampus. And so we try to, whenever we can at GSU, invite faculty from other USG institutions.
You're on mute right now. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, sure, no problem. I say anyone else is just proprietary. Thank you.
Most of our stuff is done within CourseDen, so we're kind of blocked just because of how our instance of DTL operates. We're unable to share it out. I will say as a sort of a shout out, and you may already know about this, but all of the webinars that Denise had mentioned that the USG had run, all of those are readily available. And so we at the center here at the University of West Georgia, we refer faculty to those a lot because those are good sessions, not just because CTL folks ran them, because it wasn't just CTL folks, but they're generally pretty handy, and they ran across 2 semesters so far. And so those are, I think, readily available to the entire world, I believe.
Yes,
They are.
I did.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry, I'd put the links in the chat too.
Yes, you did.
Yes.
Yes, you did. I attended quite a bit of those, and yes, you did. Thank
I
you.
recognize your name.
Yes.
And we hope to have some more this summer, so that we'll have hopefully have another series this summer. Meg, I see that you put that in a direct message to me, but did you mean to put it to everyone?
I did. Let me try again.
Meg found the article about the Symposium model and is sharing it with everyone. Well, to be respectful of time, we'll go ahead and wrap this up, but thank you so much to our presenters for sharing what you are doing on your campuses. You all are the superstars, and so many CETL directors and colleagues are here today in this meeting, and really none of the stuff that we do at the central office could be done without these CETL directors and their faculty and staff. So a big thank you to all of them for all the stuff that they do for us and that they share to faculty all throughout the system. Thanks y'all for coming.